So welcome everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Go ahead and drop in the chat box who you are, where you are from, and what you hope to get out of today's course. So go ahead and drop that in the chat box. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. It'll take me just a moment to get this all situated. Welcome everyone. If you haven't already yet, go ahead and drop in the chat box who you are, where you are from, and what you hope to get out of today's session. Can you all see the slides, Uncovering Your Compass, part 3? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Awesome, awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Please drop in the chat box who you are, where you are from, and what you hope to get out of today's masterclass. I will be your guide. So for those of you who are just coming in today, my name is Alicia Wilford. I am the founder of Yoke and Abundance. I get to say I am the #1 best-selling author of my book, Little Failures. I've been a coach for the last 5.5 years. And on Monday, I shared a little bit more of my story and how and why I came to do this work. And you can catch that replay in the Facebook group as well. So I'm hosting this 3-part masterclass series in celebration of opening my signature course in the company of women to a wider audience in a more accessible way. This course is launching today, actually. So this week I've been teaching 3 different things for this particular course in celebration of this course. We talked about the roadmap to finding your compass. So this is the roadmap that I use with all of my clients in all of my programs. It always starts with evaluating where you are, identifying what's holding you back, identifying your personal core values, and beginning to bring yourself into alignment with those personal core values, dreaming big, casting a big vision for ourselves, and then beginning to take the baby steps to go after those dreams. So that's kind of the roadmap that we have been talking about. We went through that roadmap in detail on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we began to talk about core values. We talked about what core values are, how they are kind of the big rocks in our life, and how we want to make sure that we put those big rocks into our bucket first, and that they build the house for us and with which we are operating. They are our foundation. And so if you were able to identify your core values, I would love for you to drop them in the chat box. Or if you know some of what your core values are, please drop them in the chat box. Or if you had any ahas during that session, you can drop them there as well. Today's topic is my #1 tip for getting out of an anxiety loop. This tip is going to sound deceptively simple, but I promise that it packs a really powerful punch, and it is something that I personally use often. So I believe I mentioned on Monday when we started that my undergraduate degree is in psychology. And when I decided that I wanted to be a coach, it was really important to me to make sure that I had research-backed tools to share with my clients. Now, I am really down with spiritual tools, and you can certainly call me witchy. I like to weave creativity, spirituality, and positive psychology together in my work. And anyone who knows me and who's done any work with me knows that in my work, you'll definitely get a healthy dose of all 3 of these things in anything that I'm doing. However, what I love about positive psychology is that it is the science and study of flourishing. So positive psychology, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not about toxic positivity. It is not just focusing on the positive when things are really bad. However, there are some techniques that we can use around that. This is really about resilience and what we do to flourish, even in the face of adversity and painful events. So that's what positive psychology is. And I have a certification in applied positive psychology. So the number one tip that I have for all of you for when you have a really challenging time in an anxiety loop or a thought loop that's not serving you, this is going to sound really simple, but bear with me here. So my number one tip for getting out of an anxiety thought loop is gratitude journaling. And I know what you're thinking here, because this is what I used to think about gratitude journaling before I tried a very specific type of gratitude journaling in a research-backed kind of way. So I had a friend a long time ago, and she was actually my running buddy. She and I would run 3 to 4 days a week at 5 a.m. And she told me that she had this gratitude practice where she would, at the end of the day, she would write down one thing every day that she was grateful for in her calendar and reflect on that. And I thought, oh gosh, that's a really great idea. Maybe I should give that a try too. And so I went about trying this in my morning pages, but it felt really flat for me. You know, I'd write down the 3 things that I was grateful for, but it didn't feel like, it just felt like I was going through the motions. It didn't feel like anything that I was really connecting to in a meaningful way. So when I was going through my positive psychology class, what I learned is that gratitude journaling, or gratitude in general, has the most amount of research backed behind it within the field of positive psychology. And I not only learned what I needed to add to, like, I learned what I needed to do to add to that gratitude practice to make it more meaningful and fulfilling. So what I learned in that positive psychology class, we learned about one particular case study that completely rocked my world when it came to gratitude and what gratitude journaling can do for us. So this particular research group, it had 2 groups. There were where they measured their happiness levels. They were tested, these 2 groups, they had a control group and a treatment group, and their baseline happiness levels were taken at the very beginning of this study. So the control group did absolutely nothing, and the treatment group was asked to write 3 things every single morning. So this is what the treatment group was asked to do. They were asked for 30 days to sit down and to think of 3 things that they were grateful for and write them down. And then they were asked to write down specifically why they were grateful for each of the things that they listed next to whatever it was that they listed. And the reason they were asked to do this was so that they could actually conjure that feeling of gratitude within their body. So when you actually think about what you're grateful for and why you're grateful for it, that feeling gets invoked within your body. You're able to somatically feel it. And this second step brings our feelings into the equation of gratitude journaling. So the third thing that this group was asked to do, and it's probably, in my opinion, the most important thing that all of them were asked to do, is they were asked to write down what it was that they did to bring whatever it was that they were grateful for into their lives. Now, the reason why this is so important is because it reminds us that we actually have some level of control and agency over the good things that are coming into our lives. Now, I told my mom about this, and she really pushed back on me. She was like, but Alicia, I think God puts most good things in my life. And I was like, okay, Mom, that's true. And that might very well be, but you chose to dance with those good things. You chose those good things. You said yes to what was put on your path. Therefore, you have a level of, we could call it free will in this case, to choose and control the things that we're grateful for within our life. We are able to kind of pick the path that we go down. So this is what that treatment group was asked to do. Think of 3 things they were grateful for, write them down, write down why they were grateful for them, and then write down what they did to bring each of these things into their lives. Now, they did this for 30 days. The treatment group did this for 30 whole days. And it's really interesting. After a few weeks, both groups were tested again, and the control group's happiness level stayed the same, as you would expect, because they didn't do anything. However, oddly, after a few weeks, the treatment group's happiness level actually dipped a little bit. But they think that this is possibly because it's so hard to start a new habit. So there could be a little bit of a rub or some friction there, causing happiness levels to drop, but they don't actually know. But something super interesting started to happen. So at the 30-day mark, so after 30 days of doing this gratitude practice, both groups were tested again. Everyone was at baseline. Everyone was at the same. Now, the treatment group only had to do this practice for 30 days. After 30 days, they were done. So they might have personally kept it up. They might not have. However, when they were tested 60 days out from the trial, the treatment group's happiness level had increased, and it had risen above the control group. They were all tested again 6 months out, and the happiness level had risen again. A full year after this happened, both groups were treated, and the treatment group's happiness level had even risen more. So this practice that was done for just 30 days had impacted happiness levels all the way out up to a year later. And who knows if they had kept testing it, what that would have looked like. So this is a year after measuring it. Now, the thing that I think is so interesting about this particular study is they found that it really rewires our neural pathways. So personally for me, 2019 was a really rough year for me. I had to file for bankruptcy. My dad passed away unexpectedly. And before that year, I had never had a problem sleeping. However, in 2019, I would wake up in the middle of the night and my mind would be racing, and I would be on these negative thought loops of all of the bad things that were happening and trying to problem solve my way out of them at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And we all know you can't fix anything at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So one night I was reaching for absolutely anything that I could do to turn off this thought loop. And this gratitude practice came into my head, and I just started to lay there in bed thinking about, what am I grateful for? Why am I grateful for it? And what did I do to bring that into my life? And it was like a switch flipped for me, and it interrupted that thought loop enough, and it changed my mood, and it showed me how much power I had over my life, enough that I was able to go back to sleep. And so anytime that would happen, and it happened a lot that year, I used this technique to take myself out of that thought loop to get myself back to sleep. It was a really powerful technique, and you can use it in lots of different ways. So I use it if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm just mind is racing about all of the things I feel like I can't control. And you can also just use it as a practice to help you feel like you have some sort of agency over the things, the good things that are coming into your life. I think it's really, really powerful. So that is my number one tip for you for getting out of anxiety thought loops. And this week we have done so much together. So the first thing that we did was Monday, we explored the roadmap in case you want to do this work on your own. And then on Wednesday, we identified personal core values and why they're important and how to come into alignment with them. And today, you got my number one tip and the research behind it for getting out of a negative thought loop. So, this course, this 3-part masterclass series, it is really all about celebration of the program in the company of women. So if you want to take these 3 things, if you want to take them deeper with more teaching, more in-depth concepts, inner child work, then the signature course in the company of women is going to be open to all of you for registration today. And in light of that, I've invited a panel of women who have taken part in the company of women in the past, some who have been a part of my one-on-one coaching, some who have been a part of the morning writing group Raw, to talk about their experiences in the program or in working with me. And I'm going to go ahead and welcome them on now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and pin a couple of you, bring you on. And you've seen some of these folks before. Let's see, who am I missing? Caroline. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so y'all are welcome to take yourselves off mute. I would like each of you to briefly introduce yourself and share how you have been working with me over the past few years. Deanna, can we start with you?
Of course. I always want to go by somebody else after, but that's okay. I don't even know where to start about how much my life has changed since I have met you, had you in my life. I call it Alicia Land. I've had an incredible growth. I've taken several of Alicia's courses. I'm in her morning group. And I think what sticks out most in my mind is in coaching. I was really stuck, and Alicia is very thorough when she talks to you and really gets all her information. And she records so you can watch it after. And it really made me think, like, why am I so stuck? Like, she really laid out a great plan for me. It felt like I could follow it. But it really got me to see things in a different way. And I have to say that really was life-changing for me, because I was really down on myself about not being able to do that. And since then, it has opened up, like, I don't even think Alicia realizes it, to be honest with you, because it made me really research why I was having such difficulty finishing things, focusing on things that I want. And with that, I have learned a lot about myself and have read on tips on how to help myself. And I have to say, I am so peaceful now. I can take classes now. I always thought I have to grow. I have to do this. I have to do this. Why aren't I doing this? I was so down on myself. And like, it's okay. It's okay to just learn. It's okay to be yourself. You don't have to have a goal all the time. So it almost worked in an opposite way of, instead of like, I'm going to reach this goal, it was like, I don't need to do that. Like, I can enjoy my life and what I'm learning. So that was incredibly helpful. And I have to say, I really am enjoying, I have taken courses since, and I don't have to do anything with them. I'm just having fun.
I love that, Deanna. Thank you so much for sharing. T, can you share a little bit about who you are and what you've done with me in the past and maybe why?
Absolutely. I'm T. Stoneman, and I'm in the Raw group, and I was in the most recent iteration of In the Company of Women. And first, let me talk about Raw, because that is such a heart of my life.
Mm.
The amount of support, and Alicia has this genius for attracting people who, it's a pretty miraculously wonderful group of women in Raw. I've belonged to both groups. There's 2 times, and I've belonged to both. I'm on the West Coast, so the timing of the first one, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go to Raw when that was the only option. And I don't do that. I don't do that. I might still be up or have insomnia, but I don't even know why or how I knew that this is where I wanted to be. Now I get to do the 6 o'clock group, which is much better. But the amount of support and the amount of like these compassionate mirrors that really show me the best of myself. When I'm struggling, show me that, wow, you're honest and you're brave. It's really miraculous. And then I did In the Company of Women. I had gotten a reading before from Alicia that was amazing. And then I did In the Company of Women. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure about it. I was like, sometimes I don't work. So sometimes, well, no, actually, I just don't work. And I love that I don't work. Sometimes I worry that programs are going to be too business or big project related, and that isn't what my life is about. But I was stunned by each of the classes. I learned something, and I had a list of values going in, but the list of core values I have now are the most idiosyncratic, the most T list ever. And I actually think of them pretty much every day. And I can see that little teeny course correction is taking me in a very different direction. And at the end of every class, there would be like, what are your takeaways? And some of my takeaways would astound me. And I actually wrote like, it's the relationships that matter to me, not the product. It's okay to not care about what you don't care about. And for me, that was specifically how my hair looks, providing conventional hospitality, and neatness. I don't care, and that's fine. I don't have to feel guilty about it. I know there are things I know. And one of my favorites that I never thought I would have said, and I don't think I would have said without having the examples of all these other women and having Alicia's wisdom and guidance and ability to hold space, to not pack a program so full that you never have time to process, which is rare. One of my favorites was, one of my takeaways was, I love being like this. I just love being like this, how I am. And that's a pretty astonishing thing. I don't think a lot of women say to themselves. I don't think a lot of people say to themselves. And that was through the community of In the Company of Women.
Yeah. Getting to come home to yourself and like the true self without the shoulds.
Yes.
Yeah. T, you posted your core values in the chat box, and can you explain the last one that you came up with? Yeah.
Yeah. So the last one I came up with is a set of open parentheses, like parentheses without the fancy parentheses. I'm sure they have a technical name. I don't know what that is. And just empty space in between. And that's just something I've used in my art. And it's something I've used whenever I make a to-do list, or whenever I do even a gratitude list, or steps of a project. I would just put that. And for me, it's shorthand for this space open for a miracle, this space left open for a miracle. But it also, to me, as a core value, is the space from which everything arises and to which everything returns.
Yeah.
Like sort of a Taoist thing, even though I'm not officially affiliated with anything. And that's what I mean by idiosyncratic. That's what I mean by tea. Like, I felt comfortable with that. I've been in other classes where I did one for desired feeling states for what's her name, Danielle something.
Probably
There was an
Laporte.
in-person, what?
Danielle Laporte, maybe?
Yeah, Danielle Laporte. And there was a in-person class in San Francisco, and I went to that, and it was like an all-day, maybe a 2 or 3 day process. And one of my desired feeling states was pomegranate, which, if you're not a poet, doesn't make any sense. But to me, it means something very specific, and it conjures up. And they were like, well, that's not really what we're looking for. That's not really. And to me, it was like, no, I want to feel pomegranate. And I feel like, had Alicia been the facilitator, she would have been like, tell me what that means.
Yeah, I would have.
She would have been just honestly curious. And then if I was able to describe it, she would just say, you know what, trust yourself. And I could be pomegranate and open parentheses, because that is the real truth of who I am.
Yeah, because it is really getting to that core of it. T, thank you so much for all of that. And Katie, she was on Wednesday, but Katie, can you share a little bit about who you are and some of the work that we've done together?
How can I follow that up? What she said.
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate, open parentheses. So I started out with Alicia with one of the original iterations of In the Company of Women, which I talked about on Wednesday, that, after the first session and working on core values, just doing the meditation and honing in on my core values helped me begin to completely change my life and my career. Mm-hmm. And so since then, I've done one-on-one coaching, and I'm currently in the mastermind with her, which is awesome. And, I think that In the Company of Women, well, I guess it was only 4 years ago, maybe. I think it was 4 years ago.
I think you did it in 2019.
Okay, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was only 3 years ago. Seems way longer than that, but
yeah.
It was 3 years ago, and I have completely changed my life since then. So, and I am, a much happier, more peaceful person. But as Deanna said, but I am I don't know, what am I? I'm a depth hypnosis practitioner, which is a healing modality that helps heal trauma, addictions, all sorts of difficult patterns, dealing with helping people understand that they are whole and not broken. So that's the work that I do now, which is not unlike the work that Alicia does, as T kind of explains. So, yeah. Everything that T said, I think for me, just listening to her and adding to that was that, and my understanding of how we work as humans these days is that, we are built for connection. but we're so like disconnected these days just with the way that our culture is. And that just being able to be in a circle and to be in this really safe place where we can like slowly but surely feel safe enough to like share that part of ourselves is really healing, you know? So like, I think I don't know if it was T or maybe Deanna, I don't know, one of them said that, you know, like they felt really resistant to it at first. Maybe it was T, in the company of women. I had that same experience where I was just like, oh, but it's just like over time, I realized like that it was a safe place to be myself. And then I was able to explore those deeper layers and learn like how connected we actually are and, you know, how different we are, but like, you know, like that we all are powerful, special people. Like you can only attract those kind of people because that's all that there actually is. But like you have to be in that sort of safe container to express that part of yourself. So yeah.
I love that so much. And Katie, I don't want to forget to say this, so I'm going to bring it up now. Because Katie is a depth hypnosis.
I know it's hard to say.
It is hard to say. Because Katie does depth hypnosis, I asked her to do a bonus meditation for this next round of In the Company of Women. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that meditation will take folks through?
Yeah. So in my work, you know, especially dealing with trauma and difficult emotions, and I mean, we work on in-depth hypnosis. We it's a very like holistic and integrative practice. So we look at the whole human, so physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and take all those aspects into consideration. So I know people that are having autoimmune disorders or eating disorders, or, you know, having like those negative thought loops and just, or relationship issues, or, you know, every level of issues that they're currently dealing with. But first and foremost, before we explore any of those, we create like that safety. And some of us only feel safe, you know, or feel safer in that one-on-one sort of space. So that's partially helpful, but what my goal is as a practitioner is to help you feel safe with yourself, because a lot of us don't feel safe in our own bodies. It's just the way it is these days, and that's actually really normal. And so the meditation that I'm sharing is one. We have some foundational work that we do in my work. And so it's one of the sessions that I typically do one-on-one, but I'm sharing as a group. But you meet the part of it's a guided meditation where you meet that part of yourself that has your highest good as its sole intent, that you can connect with and source your own wisdom, inner wisdom, and support and find safety within yourself, so that you can feel safe doing some deeper work, like the inner child work that In the Company of Women you explore. So
yeah, and I'm actually going to be releasing that meditation, that bonus meditation, in the first inner child module. So that will be a part of that, because I think it's really important to lay that foundation before we move forward with exploring inner child work, if we meet that part of ourself. So that's going to be a new fun part of the course in this next iteration. So Katie, thank you so much for explaining that a little bit more depth.
Thank you.
Monica, can you share who you are and in what capacities you and I have worked together?
Yeah, well, first I want to say that, Katie, that sounds fascinating and just really cool. So that I was like, this sounds amazing. So I'm Monica. I have known Alicia for quite a while, and I have done In the Company of Women at least twice. And then I've also done some one-on-one coaching, and I am working my way into the early group for Raw. It's a little challenging because sometimes it's during part of my commute, but it's really nice. I can sometimes just pop my headphones in and at least listen along at the beginning while I'm on the ferry. For me, what has been really important is, kind of like what T said with all of these compassionate mirrors. And I love that Raw gives us the space to explore things. And also, Alicia, you have these creative prompts and these ways of having us think of things that I probably wouldn't have written about on my own, but it also brings up a lot of things that I was like, I didn't even know that that was kind of in the back of my mind. And I love learning and connecting with the other women in the group. I'm somebody that I currently live alone. I spend a lot of time alone. And so to be able to have a space to have those kinds of connections with, I think, people who have so many different backgrounds and so many different approaches, every day is like a new nugget of wisdom or 4 or 5. And that's something that I've been really appreciating. And another thing that I just have to say is, kind of like what T was saying with other workshops and maybe saying like, that's not quite what we were looking for. In addition to leaving that space and approaching everything with curiosity, I really feel like Alicia also leaves us space to be very playful and maybe approach things in a way that aren't so like serious and this is what we have to do. That curiosity and that playfulness, I feel like for me leads to a lot more reflection and also a lot of discovery. And that's something that I have been so happy to take into all areas of my life.
Monica, thank you so much for that. I'm curious because you have gone through in the company of women 3 times, well, twice in the company of women. And then you did my Artist Way group way in the beginning when I was experimenting with teaching groups like that. I'm curious, this last time you went through it most recently, was there anything specifically that stood out to you, especially with the new content that just anything you want to comment about that new content?
The new content with the inner child work for me was really powerful. It gave me there were a lot of aha moments and things that were something I had wanted to address, but kind of didn't know it was like hanging over my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And it really gave me a safe space to explore, to be curious, and to kind of ask why without judgment. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something, had I been doing that on my own, there probably would have been a lot of judgment attached to it. So I really, really enjoyed that. And also there was someone else in the group that we actually had a lot of similar experiences. And so being able to hear someone else who had a similar past, similar experiences, and to hear her wisdom and how she was feeling and how she was moving forward, I found that to be very empowering and very enlightening.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for that. Caroline, how about you? I know you spoke a little bit on Monday, but could you share with folks who you are and maybe some of the work we've done together and anything that's standing out for you right now?
Yeah, I was just thinking there are so many good things have been said. I don't even know what to add. So I mentioned some of this on Monday for those of you that were there, but I first started working with Alicia back in 2019, right at the beginning of the year. And it was just one of those things. I don't even know what brought it about, but it was like the perfect time and the perfect thing that I needed at just a time where I was feeling very lost and just not good, having a little bit of a hard time even putting my finger on all of what was going on there. And so that really prompted, that was when we were doing the one-on-one coaching, but that just prompted like a very big journey for me over the last few years. And my life is also very different than it was at that time. I've made a lot of changes. I've gone, also as a result, I think it was very complimentary for me that I also went into therapy around the same time. And so it was really helpful to kind of have those two different but complementary sorry, I don't usually hold a dog, but I am right now because of circumstances. But yeah, I think that was really helpful. And at the time, I had just never really been in an environment where I had somebody to serve as a mirror in the way that Alicia was for me. And she also was pointing out a lot of things that I had never really realized about myself in terms of like, do you hear how you're talking to yourself? Like, this is a lot of negative self-talk, things like that, that now seem obvious because I've learned about that. But like just very basic things that at the time, without somebody else outside of me, just kind of mentioning some of those things and giving me some tools to reflect on it and asking me questions that I had never even asked or thought you could ask, or I was too scared because the answers sometimes weren't, what you wanted them to be. But and then I was also in the company of women now twice, both in I guess your last in-person group, right, as the pandemic hit. So we didn't even get to do our very last one because it was literally like March 2020. And then Zoom, the most recent iteration this summer. And I think those were really important for me also because a big part of many of the things one of the many things I've been working on is just like, I was very closed off. Like I was not, if you've heard me say anything vulnerable and raw or in any of these, this is like all brand new to me. Like in the past, I had just never opened myself up to those kinds of conversations with people. And that takes a lot of practice over the last couple of years. And so having a group that is just like how we operate and how, like I think T said, it's just like everyone is also just such a compassionate listener and can also, I think when you hear or see that for other people, again, it helps you to learn to do that for yourself when it's just you. And that is also something that was very new for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so very, very much for sharing. Are there any final thoughts about Raw in the company of women or coaching that any of you want to share before we wrap up the panel?
Alicia is magic. That's all.
I love you. Thank you.
I will say that your written material, Alicia's written material, is designed so that you can use it again and again and again. It's not like there are things you can revisit when you feel like, okay, I've gotten a little off course in my navigation. I need to get hold of this. The tools and the written materials I've found incredibly helpful.
Thank you so much for that. Well, thank you all. I'm going to unpin you, and I want to see if there are any questions in the chat about anything we have covered this week, be it about in the company of women or about the path. And let's see. I'm going to pin me really quick. Okay. If you have anything, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. I'm going to just share my screen really quickly again here. I just want to share a little bit more about the course in the company of women, because I've really taken a lot of time to consider how to create this in a module form in a way that would still feel intimate, in a way that would still feel connecting and like someone's holding up a mirror. And I want you to feel like I'm sitting right there with you across the table from you. But the most important thing is I like to think about so many of us feel paralyzed in our experience that we don't even know how to move forward. And a lot of that has to do with old thought patterns and behaviors. And, sometimes it's about bringing in more compassion and freedom for ourselves. And something that I've been learning over and over and over again is the importance of choosing me, not waiting to be chosen. And so that's what I'm hoping that this course will really help us do, right? This is the work. And you know what? It's not just that I'm here saying, do this and it's all going to be better. I'm actively doing this work too. I do everything that I ask clients to do. And I do it over and over and over and over again. And sometimes I screw up and sometimes it's really hard. All the time it's really hard, but I keep doing it. And it does get you to where you want to go. It does connect you to your own inner wisdom. And that's the most important thing that I want folks to know when they go through a course like this, is that it's your wisdom. The answers are already inside of you, and everything that I'm offering should point you back to yourself. So what this particular program is doing is it's a 6-week roadmap, right? Where we talk about our, where we are, we evaluate where we are. That roadmap we were talking about on Monday, evaluating where we are, and then exploring our inner child. What patterns did we create as children that really protected us then, but don't serve us anymore? And then what's our inner child power, right? Like, what is the magic, the desires, the special sauce from our childhood that we can use now to help guide us going forward? I really think that our inner child is so much of a beacon and a lighthouse for us if we're really willing to go in there and do that work. Then, of course, we identify our core values and work on bringing ourselves into alignment with those core values. And then finally, we do vision casting. So it's like dreaming about and setting the vision for, or the intention for, where it is that you want to go, and then begin thinking about the baby steps or the roadmap that you want to take to get there. So I've done 6 recorded modules, and I release each module on Mondays at noon for 6 weeks. And then we do a live in-person, well, not in person, I wish it was in person, a live call on Fridays at noon. That will be a Q&A session about the work that we've been doing, as well as coaching. So you'll have the opportunity to apply to be the person that is coached during that session. And I promise I make it relatively painless. And then we do a private community, a private Facebook community. I know Facebook is not the very best to be on all the time. However, they do have the best groups right now. So that is what we'll be using for the group. And so the course outline really looks like this. It starts October 3rd. The first module will be dropped on October 3rd at noon. And then Friday is the live Q&A. And it goes all the way through November 11th is when we will wrap up. The program is either a payment of $497 in full, or 2 payments of $267. And I have a bonus for the first 25 people who sign up. And that is a bonus of my signed book, a bag, and a Yoke and Abundance mug, We Rise by Lifting Others. And that will ship before the end of the program to the first 25 people who sign up for the program. So I am going to stop sharing, and I'm going to drop the link to that. If you want to explore all of the different avenues of that program, I'm dropping the link in here. Y'all are the very first to get it, to see it. And if you have any questions about the program, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat box. I'll stay on for a little bit to answer any questions that you might have. But a major thank you to each and every one of you for being a part of this over the past week. It's been so much fun to share all of this with all of you. And I'm so very grateful that all of you have been here. So, I'll stick around for any questions that folks might have, but thank you so much for being here today. Thanks, Deanna. Thank you, T. Any questions? Oh, thank you so much. All right, have a wonderful day. Take care.